They didn't even pause the game when I came through the door. 12 years gone, and all my little brother did was glance over the back of the couch like I was a late pizza delivery. My father muted the TV, remote still clutched in his hand. His eyes flicked over me. Duffel bag, worn boots, the creases in a uniform I hadn't worn in public in years. He looked at me the way people look at an unexpected bill. My mother stood in the kitchen doorway, drying a dish that was already dry. "Oh, you're here," she said. "Good. Just leave your bag in the laundry room, Wasiy. The guest room is full of Daniel's things for the ceremony." "You understand?" "I did. I always did. My name is Wasiy, and in my family, I am the one they learned to live without. Once, I was the golden child. Scholarship, captain of the track team, the kid teachers called, going places. Then I chose a path none of them understood. Not med school. Not law. Not the safe government job my dad's friend lined up. I chose the Navy. After that, as far as my family was concerned, I vanished. Not missing. Just erased. Tonight was supposed to be about my younger brother, Daniel. Their pride. Their proof they'd done parenting right. The whole town was coming to celebrate him getting pinned to a shiny new intelligence unit. My parents repainted the porch, rented a tent, strung lights across the backyard like we were in a movie. I was invited. Technically. I knew what that meant: stand where they tell you, smile in the photos, don't talk about where you've been. Don't mention the things that still wake you up at 3 a.m., in a sweat you can't explain. By 6 o'clock, the house was full. Old neighbors, church ladies, guys from Daniel's unit. Young faces, crisp uniforms, laughing about boot camp like it was the hardest thing they'd ever seen. They sat me at the folding table by the kitchen door, next to the kids' section and the bowl of potato salad. Close enough to help. Far enough not to be seen. From my corner I watched my father raise a glass, his voice big and proud. "To service," he said. "To sacrifice. To carrying the family name with honor. To my son, Specialist Daniel Cole." Everyone clinked glasses. I stayed seated. No one asked where I'd been for the last decade. No one asked why I'd walked with a slight limp now, or why I flinched when a tray crashed in the kitchen. To them, I joined the Navy, not finished, and drifted off to do something overseas. Teacher, maybe. Consultant. They never quite agreed on the lie. They never asked for the truth. I was halfway through a lukewarm plate of food when the front door opened and every conversation in the house shifted, just a little. Boots on hardwood, a uniform that wasn't dress casual, but full formal. Black jacket, rows of ribbons that said, "I've been places you've only seen in documentaries." A man stepped into the tented backyard, mid-40s, sharp eyes, salt at his temples. A major. Army, not Navy. Wrong branch for this party. He scanned the crowd, face unreadable. Then he saw me. He stopped like he'd hit an invisible wall. Before my father could ask who he was looking for, the major crossed the lawn, heels punching into the grass, every head turning to follow. He came to a halt in front of my cheap plastic folding chair. And in the middle of my little brother's big night, with paper lanterns and a Bluetooth speaker playing soft country covers, this man snapped to attention. Back straight. Eyes locked on mine. "Sir. Commander Wasiy Rahman," he said, voice clear enough to slice through the chatter, requesting permission to speak freely. The backyard went dead silent. My fork hit the plate. Behind him, I watched my family's faces warp, confusion, annoyance, then something dangerously close to fear. My brother's smile froze on his face. "Commander?" he repeated, like the word tasted wrong. The major didn't look away from me. "Best field officer I ever served under," he said, louder now, like he wanted everyone in that yard to hear. "Kept my team alive in situations we had no business walking out of. It's an honor to see you again, sir." My father's glass slipped out of his hand and thunked against the table. No one even checked if it broke. Nobody moved. All of a sudden, every time they'd called me, the one who didn't finish, hung in the air between us like smoke. I stood up slowly. Years of training made my body move before my brain caught up. "At ease, Major," I said. My voice held steady. My hands didn't. He relaxed just slightly, then leaned in and dropped his voice low so only I could hear. "They're coming after you," he murmured. Check your secure line. Tonight. Then he stepped back, the mask of formality snapping back into place. Just wanted to pay my respects, he said for the crowd. Congratulations on your son, Mr. and Mrs. Cole. You raised one hell of a soldier. And just like that he was gone. Back through the house. Out the front door. The whispers started before it even shut behind him. Commander. Served under him. I thought he washed out. That night, the house felt different. Not quieter, just tense. Like the walls were listening. I lay on the soft mattress in the finished storage room they'd cleared for me, surrounded by boxes labeled Daniel's Awards. Ceremony decor. Fragile. Nothing with my name on it. I pulled my old, scarred laptop from my duffel, the one nobody knew I still had. No stickers. No brand showing. Just a machine that had seen more deserts and airfields than most commercial planes. My fingers moved on the keyboard before I even thought about it. Years of muscle memory, unlocking layers of encryption. Stepping back into a world I wasn't supposed to admit existed. The moment my secure line connected, my screen lit up red. BRATDCS DEFIED RCHIVSESSATEMPT de UNIOZD or IDN locat or vehicle ready GEO80 my hometown. I drilled down. The digital trail snaked through a university server, bounced off a coffee shop's Wi-Fi, then settled into something familiar. A login from the college Daniel had attended. A failed attempt to open an operation file that should have been burned years ago. An op I'd led. An op that had gone right, and wrong in ways no one outside my team ever knew. My heart crawled up into my throat. Whoever it was had tripped old alarms, the kind wired not just to alert, but to retaliate, and somewhere in the Pentagon, or in some defense contractor's basement, a board analyst had done what board analysts do best. They'd started talking. By the time I found the first rumor, the story had already mutated. Anonymous posts on obscure forums. Redacted screenshots with my name blurred out, but my call sign intact. A whisper campaign. Commander went rogue. Friendly fire. Civilian casualties. Cover, up. Everything we'd blood to prevent, turned inside out and weaponized against me. Not just against me. Against my team. Against ghosts who'd already given up their real names for missions that could never exist on paper. I slammed the laptop shut. For 12 years I had watched my family erase me with silence. Now strangers I'd never meet were rewriting me with lies. And the one operation I'd sworn never to drag into the light was being hauled out, dissected, used as a shield for someone else's mistake. I stared at the ceiling, listening. Down the hall. My parents' voices were sharp, urgent, just low enough they thought I couldn't hear. You said, he barely made it through. Major. What did he call him? Why didn't he tell us? No one came to my door. No one knocked. I lay there until the thin line between rage and exhaustion finally snapped. If they were going to bury me, they were going to have to look me in the eyes when they did it. By sunrise, I was in uniform. Not the faded, half-washed one I'd traveled in. The one that still fit like it was made for my bones. Dress blues that almost nobody in this town knew I'd earned. In the hallway, the family wall, hit me like a punch. My father in his fire department dress jacket. My mother in a nurse's uniform, standing in front of a hospital wing they'd named after a donor. My brother in cap and gown. My brother at graduation from basic. My brother in his new unit's patch, framed and centered. The space where my high school photo used to be was bare. Faded wallpaper, a ghost of a frame outline. I laughed once, no humor in it. My phone buzzed. Unknown number, government prefix. I answered. Commander Rahman, a clipped voice said. This is Colonel Harlan, Joint Operations Review. You are to report to Wright Patterson at Soder 900s for an internal inquiry. Failure to comply. I'll be there, I said. He hesitated, thrown off by how fast I agreed. Bring any materials you may have retained from prior deployments. The line went dead. At the kitchen table, my mother froze when she saw me. Not the uniform. The medals. Is that official? She asked, like I might have picked it up at a surplus store. Yes, Mom, I said. This one doesn't come in costume form. My father folded his newspaper with exaggerated care. We have a big day for your brother, he said.
Try not to.
complicate things. I looked at him for a long moment. Someone already did, I said. And they used all of us to do it. He didn't ask what I meant. He never had. Military conference rooms all look the same. Too cold. Too bright. Coffee that tastes like burnt anxiety. I walked into one that could have been anywhere in the world, except for the Ohio license plates in the parking lot. Colonel Harlan sat at the head of the table. Perfectly pressed uniform, perfectly rehearsed smile. Next to him, a legal officer I didn't know, two people from compliance, and a recorder mouse, clicking her way through the pre-meeting checklist. Commander Rahman, Harlan said, standing just enough to pretend it was respect. Have a seat. I placed a small thumb drive on the table. It was old school, metal casing dinged at the edges, but every bite inside it was live enough to burn the room down. This is everything, I said. Mission orders, command approvals, after action reports, the parts you signed and then pretended not to recognize. Harlan's smile didn't falter. His eyes darkened. You were instructed to surrender any sensitive material at the end of your service, he said. Retaining classified data is itself a violation, Commander. Funny thing about being told to destroy evidence, I said. Sometimes the wrong people are in charge of the match. The legal officer shifted in his seat. We're not here to litigate ancient history, Harlan said. We've had concern raised about your psychological stability, your decision-making in the field, and now, your possible role in an unauthorized data exposure. I stared at him, then laughed once. You're accusing me, I said slowly, of leaking my own operations file from my hometown while staying in my parents' spare room during my brother's promotion party. Harlan spread his hands. Optics are unfortunate, I agree. But if you cooperate, we can keep this contained. Quietly correct the record. Correct the record, I repeated. Is that what they call smear him until no one asks what really happened now? His mask slipped, just for a second. You were given latitude on that mission most officers only dream of, he snapped. A blank check. Off the books. We cleaned up the mess it made. I leaned forward. The only mess we made was saving lives after someone high up signed a green light on bad intel, I said. You remember that part, Colonel? Or did your memory get redacted with the file? The air in the room went sharp. For a second, nobody breathed. Then the door opened with a soft click. My brother walked in. Out of uniform, but still standing like he was on parade. Face pale. Hands shaking just enough that I could see it. He clutched a thin folder to his chest. Sir, he said to Harlan. I was told I could. Harlan stiffened. This is a closed. I traced the access logs. Daniel blurted, too fast to be stopped. The breach they're blaming my brother for. It wasn't him. He turned to me for the first time since the party. Really looked at me. I tried to look you up, he said. On the secure side. Just to understand why no one ever talked about what you did. Why we never saw your name anywhere. He swallowed hard. When I hit that archive, alarms went off before I even knew what it was. But the trail didn't end with me. He dropped the folder on the table, papers splaying out. Screenshots. IP traces. Names. It routed through my school, he said. To a private defense contractors network. They used my attempt as cover to poke at the file themselves. They're the ones who copied it. They're the ones seeding those rumors. The legal officer leaned forward, eyes locking on the company listed at the top of the page. Harlan's jaw tightened. Son, he said carefully, you're misinterpreting complex technical. I'm not your son, Daniel said quietly. And I know what a proxy chain looks like. Sir? He looked back at me, guilt clear in his eyes. I thought you left because you didn't care about us, he said. I thought you were ashamed. He shook his head. I never thought they'd be the ones ashamed of you. No one spoke. The recorder's mouse finger hovered, frozen. I took a breath. So here's how this goes, I said, voice flat. You can keep pushing this onto me. Tell the story that's easiest to swallow. Call me unstable, reckless. Whatever word gets you the best headline if this leaks. I tapped the thumb drive. Or we put everything on the table. The orders you signed. The civilians we evacuated. The fact that the only reason there weren't body bags with congressmen's kids' names on them is because my team ignored your timeline and stayed an extra hour in that compound. I let the words sink in. You want quiet? I asked. Clear my name. Restore my record. Stop the contractors from using my life as a firewall for their screw-ups, and leave my team's ghosts where they belong, buried with honor, not dragged out as clickbait. The legal officer exhaled slowly. Colonel, he said, with respect, if any of this goes public with documentation attached, we're looking at hearings far above your pay grade. And mine. Harlan stared at me across the table. For the first time since I'd walked into that room, he looked tired. You kept copies, he said. Not a question. A quiet accusation. I promised my people, I said, if anyone ever tried to rewrite what we did, I'd have receipts. Silence stretched. Finally, Harlan nodded once to the recorder. Pause, he said. The clicking stopped. He rubbed his temples, then looked up at me. We can correct the record, he said grudgingly. On paper, quietly, no fanfare. You'll get what your file should have said from the start. And the smear? I asked. Well, shut it down at the source, he said. Internal audit. Contract reviews, it'll disappear. He held my gaze. But the mission stays buried, Commander. No book deal, no interviews, no hints on social media. You go back to being a ghost. Just a properly documented one. I thought of Elena's laugh in the back of a blackout van. Of Mike's kid learning to walk from videos he watched on a cot halfway around the world. Of the two names I still couldn't say out loud without my throat closing. I was never doing this for glory, I said. Just don't let them turn us into villains to cover your mistakes. He nodded once. Deal. The letter came a week later. Plain envelope. No ceremony. Upon review, it said, the board has determined previous redactions to Commander Wasiy Rahman's record were made in error. His service is reinstated in full, with commendations. No apology, just correction. Sometimes, that's all you get. Sometimes, it's enough. Word got around town in the way it always does. Not in big announcements, just in the way people's eyes changed when they saw me. The neighbor who used to pretend not to notice when I jogged past gave me a small, respectful nod. At church, the pastor didn't introduce me as Daniel's brother who travels a lot. Anymore, he just said, this is Wasiy. He served. My mother started using my name when she told stories. She'd slip sometimes, say, or other one, the one who, then stop, correct herself. Our son Wasiy. He was in something special. We can't really talk about it. My father never apologized outright. One evening, as the sun bled out over the cul-de-sac, he joined me on the front steps, a beer in his hand and a stiffness in his shoulders that had nothing to do with age. We thought you were running away from us, he said eventually. I was, I admitted. Just not in the way you thought. He stared at his bottle. I didn't ask what it cost you, he said. I should have. The streetlights flickered on. For what it's worth, he added, voice rough. I'm glad someone finally did. We sat there in the soft Ohio quiet. For once, the silence between us wasn't a wall, it was a bridge. The next time I walked past the family wall, I almost missed it. Tucked between my brother's academy photo and my parents' wedding picture was a frame I'd never seen before. No dress blues. No perfectly posed portrait. Just a grainy shot someone on my team had snapped years ago, me. In dusty fatigues, sleeves rolled, dirt on my face, laughing at something off camera, a blurred hand throwing me a bottle of water. On the corner of the frame, in my mother's careful handwriting, was a single word. Home. I stood there longer than I meant to. Later, by the creek where my brother and I used to catch tadpoles, he skipped stones like he was trying to find the perfect angle to start the conversation. I told people you quit, he said finally. Because if you'd really done something worth talking about, Mom and Dad would have told us. He shook his head at his own logic. I didn't want to be in your shadow, he said. So I pretended you didn't cast one. He picked up another stone, turned it in his fingers. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I made you smaller because I was scared there wouldn't be room for both of us to be big. I took the stone from his hand and sent it skipping across the surface, tiny ripples reaching both our sides of the bank. You never had to erase me to become you, I said. There was always room. I used to think belonging meant being on the wall, in the story, in the conversation. Now I know sometimes it just means not having to disappear to make other people comfortable. I'm still a ghost, in a lot of ways. There are things I will never say on camera, never write in a comment, never admit even with the mic off. But when I walk into my parents' house now, nobody looks through me. My mother asks if I slept okay. My father asks how my knee is doing when it rains. My brother asks, "Hey, you want to come talk to some of the new guys about what service really feels like?" And when a stranger in town finds me and says, "Are you the one they wrote that letter about?" I can shrug and say, "I'm just somebody who went where I was sent." The only difference now is, the story matches the scars. Sometimes it takes losing your name on paper to find out who you are without it. Sometimes it takes a lifetime for the people closest to you to finally see you. And when they do, it doesn't feel like fireworks or parades. It feels like this: a quiet room, a worn picture on a wall, a family that finally knows your name and says it without flinching.